Hey guys, welcome to another session of RBTL, or Reading Between the Lines. It's been a very long time since I've done an RBTL, and this one's coming in again a bit late, especially with, as I'm making the recording, there's only 4 days left until this balance patch, so hopefully this still matters to some people. I know that some people actually came on the stream and said that, hey, we're waiting for that video, so appreciate that. If you are watching this, of course, thank you. Let me try to blast through this. So, Dark Corvus, Briar, which ML Elena says Yufine, Celine, Camilla, and then we got 3 artifacts which I'll talk about. I won't actually in this video talk about the change in terms of the mechanic. So they're calling it a system improvement. It is changed. Long story short, it's really just about how the interaction of anti-crit and like the guaranteed crit works. So if you're interested in that, I would just read it yourself. I'm not going to cover that in this. I'm going to cover as I usually do, the balance patch itself in terms of the heroes and the artifacts. Okay, so let's talk about the first ML5 getting a buff. So 3 ML5, so this one's a whammy, and I think the RGBs actually matter in this one as well. So I predict that this patch is pretty big. Probably won't shift meta, but it will definitely bring these heroes out of your cabinet in terms of like you'll dust them off and you actually use them off the bench. Dark Corvus, first things first, is 100% chance to provoke now instead of a 75, which is really good for his kit, right? This just now gels better. Now I think just because like, you know, FCC for the longest time has the only 100% chance to provoke. This is a nice addition to him, and I think he definitely needs it. You might be asking, well, can this fit on a counter set then? So here's the thing with counter set Dark Corvus, maybe you're thinking about this. Counter set Dark Corvus, revenge set Dark Corvus might not be the best for him, just because if people are drafting against your Dark Corvus that have single target, then the counter set might not be that good. But if there is like a counter set, maybe it's not that bad if they're forced to do AoE, but not a lot of heroes at the moment are forced to do AoE that can actually trigger the counter. So like realistically, we're talking about Bellion is one, but Bellion may be on injury, so like, you know, your Dark Corvus is not gonna do well there. And like a Fire Charlotte, right? That can actually trigger the counter, so probably not really good value. And same with revenge set, because again, if you're drafting Dark Corvus and someone lets Dark Corvus through, they're realistically not going to be attacking him for no reason unless they think that they can injure him on the turn they attack, or maybe stun, like provoke lock. I was gonna say stun lock. He can't even stun anymore. Provoke lock or something like that, so that he can not do the S3. So those are just something to consider. So I think his best in slot for now that I can think of would probably be speed set. So he keeps his speed high, because his S3 also has a lower cooldown now. So you probably just want him to just turn cycle even if they choose not to hit him, right? So because he's realistically, unless injury is played against him or like massive control, realistically he is someone that will guarantee your team to win, especially if you pick him late, right? In a World Arena scenario. If we're talking about Guild War and all that stuff, I think Dark Corvus just has a quicker kit now, so he would just do that really well for those who still run Dark Corvus in like Guild War and Arena. But the 100% chance to provoke, super good, vital. The immune to stun is also very nice. So currently, I mean, we have a couple heroes, handful of heroes that are immune to stun completely. That being like Champion Zerato, Mort, Angel of Light. I think that's it. Maybe there's 1 or 2 that I can't think of right now. But having that is really nice, because this now keeps one of the debuffs that can keep him locked off the table. So in terms of silence, sleep, provoke lock, and I think those are the only 3 that can keep him from doing his S3, or unless someone resets his cooldown, but that's not really a debuff. But in terms of immune to stun, that's very, very big. So because now he has 100% chance to provoke, immune to stun, the old Dark Corvus being like kind of 100 ER, maybe 150 ER even, and Strat Gauntlet, probably not necessary anymore. I think you could probably run him on something like Crimson Seed, so just to shake off any kind of debuff, like a provoke or a silence or something like that, and then immune to stun, it just becomes really good. So if you have spare stats on Dark Corvus going forward, perhaps it's okay to have some effectiveness. It probably won't be too troll, just because now you have 100% chance to provoke. Back in the day when hand guy was kind of like meta, I was already theory crafting, and I did run a hand guy with like 50 to 70 effectiveness. is just because his S2 does like a full strip. So I felt that was like super high value. And the same with Dark Corvus. Like having effectiveness on him wouldn't be too troll because now he has a guaranteed provoke, minus the resistance check, of course. So I kind of like that. And in other words, if you can find ER or effectiveness, it would be his quote unquote his like 5th stat, because in all of the gear like HP neck, HP ring, speed boots, and then all your left side gear, realistically you're gonna start losing value in terms of gear score if you just funnel speed, HP, defense, flat defense, and flat HP. So you could have some pieces that has a couple decent hit sets, or even a hit set works on him, but I think his best in slot might be speed and HP set going forward, or even defense set. But honestly, just go with anything with high gear score, and I think that will net him some very positive stuff. Dark Corvus currently, even before this buff patch coming, is already usable in World Arena, especially in a last pick scenario. If your opponents pick too little damage or too little control, too much sustain, Dark Corvus plus an A Ravi or Dark Corvus plus another injury dealer is already good enough, if you can't cleave or whatever. So the 7-turn cooldown also very nice. Again, if Dark Corvus is untouched, he's getting his S2 quicker. If he's hit and he's harder to pin down now, he gets his cooldown even quicker. So he just ends the game faster. So realistically, Dark Corvus I think is going to be like not a meme, not a joke. He's just gonna be like good, and he's already strong enough right now, but he's just gonna be better. We're gonna see some Dark Corvus lovers coming out, especially in World Arena. Definitely to build, like you want to build a Dark Corvus, in my opinion. There's a lot of tank down players, and Dark Corvus is gonna do a lot for you there. Briar Witch Iseria, also pretty impressed with her buff. I would say Briar Witch and Astromancer Elena are probably the two to watch, in terms of what they were like before to where they are going to be now. Are definitely going to be the ones that I would say change up the meta more so than Dark Corvus. Okay, that's what I am going to say right now. So Briar Witch, I would say Briar Witch's buff is almost like a rework. Actually Elena as well, but in terms of Briar Witch, the passive that she used to have in the Witch's Curse is now basically split into her S3 and the S1. So one, it can't be sealed, but I guess that is the like most minimal thing that you would want to seal anyway. That doesn't really matter. The sealing, the big one would have been the hit chance, but now there's also additional effect, which is allies and enemies cannot revive. So that being said, this is now, I would say, quite a big game changer, plus the increased hit chance. So before I had 35, this is assuming max Mola. So 35 plus like a, let's say, Symbol of Unity or anything with like a 20 hit chance is only 55, right? So that kind of falls short. Sometimes it does miss the Rylets, and with Aiden now like kind of running quite rampant, or at least is one of the main characters that people have in their toolbox, Briar Witch kind of shuts them down, right? She does no longer do unbuffable though, in terms of the like for a Rylet, but she still does strip, so that's okay. But no unbuffable, so not a hard counter to Rylet, but nor was she before. Allies and enemies cannot revive. Now this passive, I wanted to talk about as a collective thing, not just for her. Like this is cool. But this is what I kind of hoped for when Bellion was released, where Bellion suppresses souls, but only on the opponent's side. So those who have Bellion on their side, they can spam souls once they start collecting it. But in terms of Briar Witch, this mechanic now, in my opinion, is more fair, where both sides can't revive. So like the person who is using Briar Witch will most likely not rely on a reviver, even if they do draft a reviver. So in terms of like they draft, let's say, Destina, then they're not using Destina for the revive, they're using her for the big heal, the good cycling, and then also the cleanse. But I like this mechanic better in terms of like, if Smilegate is going to implement these kind of like global mechanic shutdowns, you may as well affect both sides to kind of make it more fair. So like there's a sacrifice, because these global mechanics are huge, right? They're very powerful. And Briar Witch just being alive as long as this passive is not sealed, it just like nullifies it. So like realistically, what Briar Witch is doing is making Singelica almost pointless. Like Singelica will probably be useful still in like Guild War, but it just makes Singelica almost absolutely not. There's no point with Singelica almost, because now Briar Witch most likely runs on Guiding Light. So if you had the triple banner and you were pulling for Guiding Lights, hopefully you had a lot, because I ended up pulling like 7 Guiding Lights, or I have 7 total Guiding Lights, and it was only because after last season of World Arena when Athletica became meta again, like all these heroes and Laika and all that, it felt like everyone needed Guiding Light, and so I took out more just because I'm like, it's just gonna be a lot of ranges that's just gonna have utility like Lua or whatever. And Briar Witch is going to be one, right? So as long as Briar Witch stays in stealth and doesn't have a way to get knocked out, then this passive just remains like really threatening. And then Briar Witch, because again of like how much damage she could do, and she does defense break on the S1 and defense break on the S3 now, and she increases damage if it's a successful attack, and most likely it will be unless she's blind or whatever, because you're going to hit. So blind versus an evasion hero, I should re-clarify that, because of the hit chance, then she's still going to be really good damage. So I feel like the Briar Witch Iseria probably going to be like just high damage build, masked in Guiding Light, and still has that immortality, and as long as she's alive, no one can revive. And so I think Briar Witch is going to have a lot of good play. She can probably be used in aggressive almost cleave style drafts, but I would say mainly just aggressive, like aggro. She can be used as a counter pick, 4th, 5th pick or something like that, threatening in a standard draft as well. Again, if your opponents pick too much single target, can't reach her, but then rely on revive, she's gonna shut that down. So overall, Briar Witch's like buff is one of the strongest ones right now, and I'm glad that they got rid of the extra damage here, because otherwise she's just, I think, a bit too strong. The debuffs have changed somewhat. So instead of the decreased attack, oh sorry, the unbuffable will still remain. Sorry, I got it mixed up. So it's the decreased attack that got changed. So in terms of yeah, she still shuts down Rylet. Sorry, my bad. So attacks all enemies with a cursed Thornbush. Again, dispelling all buffs. Okay, so like all dispel plus ignore ER. 75% chance to decrease the defense, because otherwise it's too OP, right? Too OP if it's ignore and it's 100. So 100% chance to make the unbuffable for 2 turns, and then so 2 turn defense break, and then also 2 turn unbuffable as it was before. And then like I said, the passive from the previous Briar Witch is now added to this. So again, I think she's gonna be very, very strong, very annoying to deal with for those again relying on revive, right? Astromancer Elena. Oh, okay. So in terms of let's say Destina is running really rampant right now, right? So in terms of these 2 heroes, Dark Corvus and Briar Witch, I think they already make Destina less valuable. Okay, let's just put it that way. Anyways, so Astromancer Elena, also a pretty big buff. Again, it looks like a rework more than just a buff. So at the start of the turn, grant Start Blessing for 1 turn. When the caster is granted Star's Blessing, enemy heroes cannot counterattack. So this is huge. It also can't be dispelled. Based on her rotation, unless she gets unbuffable applied to her in between, she will basically be kind of like Briar Witch. If Briar Witch is alive and just stands there, no one can revive. If you have no way to reach Elena and no way to put unbuffable on her, then no one can counter. So very, very powerful. And again, Astromancer Elena is, guess what? A ranger. So again, Guiding Light, another Guiding Light hero. But in terms of like, I think like Astromancer Elena, again, as long as she's on the field, no one can counterattack. This is pretty big, right? So like she can be drafted into, I think, maybe Cleave again, and it's kind of like the same as Briar Witch. Cleave, aggro, and standard all safe, as long as like in the Cleave comp, you know where she's going. In the standard comp, you're picking her kind of late, especially if they have committed to too much counterattacks, right? But in terms of the nature of counter attack in general, like we only have a couple that is like a counter dependent, which is like Shu and let's say like Senya and stuff like that for like a standard fight, right? And I guess Archdemon Shadow as well. But if somehow you can keep Astromancer Elena protected, then those heroes can't get to her. If you can't kill her, they can't counterattack. So I think she does quite a bit. After an ally except the caster attacks all enemies. So now that it's changed, the requirement is changed now. Before it was when the target is unable to counterattack, it activates worship, and only after an ally except the caster attacks. This time it has to be an AoE attack from an ally, then it activates. Increase combat readiness of the caster by 20% instead of 15% to the allies by 15%. Now, I'm not quite sure if, like, I guess really realistically what this is like allowing for is like a guaranteed turn for her, so she doesn't have to be like, let's say, an opener, right? Because again, the AoE attacks lends her to be like, she'll be part of like a cleaver comp. So let's say some kind of cleave opener does AoE, maybe like an Athletica or something. Let's just use that as an example. And then attacks all enemies, increase combat readiness of herself. So she gets the turn. Star's Blessing also increases the attack and crit damage by 15%, which is really good. And Elena already had, if I remember correctly, she had some damage issues, but now maybe she can be built as full damage, right? So she becomes a decent kind of like hero that could be serve as the first turn to do damage. And also just like apply these, like, you know, restriction and unhealable to your opponent. So I feel like that's pretty strong. In terms of yeah, and then also the increased attack and then the crit damage also very good. Let's see here, and then the Enraged Star's Retribution. So in terms of her S1, so when we think about cycling back through S1, I think the S1 only has something like, if they're debuffed, it does more damage. I don't remember the damage mods right now. I don't think it's necessary to talk about in terms of the importance of it, because I feel like now she has a better rotation. So you can kind of imagine her working in these scenarios, especially those who rely on counterattacks as an anti-cleave deterrent or anti-aggro. So like something like if they use Ram or they use Green Armin or something like that. But yeah, this attacks all enemies. And because of the Star's Blessing that was on her turn, no matter what, it can be dispelled. They will no longer counterattack. So in terms of like the skill before, it was like it does not trigger a counterattack. That's redundant now. The debuff that they designed, the unable to counterattack debuff, is no longer even in the game, at least for now. Just because of this passive being so powerful, right? So that's kind of what I was talking about in terms of like a global passive being shut down. It would be kind of fair if both sides do it, but in terms of Elena, I think it's, yeah, I don't know. Well, it's up to the balance team. I'm not gonna talk about that too much. We'll just talk about the buffs. Yeah, so yeah, the unhealable and the restriction for 2 turn, very nice. If I remember correctly, she has a soul burn that ignores resist. Is that on the S3? Hold on, one sec. I also have my Epic 7 open. I think it is a soul burn is ignore ER. Yeah, so this doesn't change. Yeah, so soul burn ignore ER, so it makes them unable to, yeah, so restrict and unhealable and ignores ER, right? And it decreased the buff duration. So again, very powerful. Same thing again with Briar Witch. Soul burn ignore effect resist. This, she has soul burn ignore effect resist. Again, it's kind of like Cleaver Central, right? Like Bellion is still going to be one of the top bans for those who want to play Cleave and aggro, because they want to be opening these like book holders. And there's just a lot of like synergy that I can think of, like, right? Because ML Elena can be built crit rate, right? So she could be somewhat like a C Pavel initiator too. Like you can imagine all these like crazy tech going in. It's gonna be nutty. It's gonna be very nutty. I think this meta now with the new buffs now, like playing tank down is not gonna be a thing. And I felt like it was short-lived. I felt like if anything, this season tank down style was coming back a bit with ROL Destina and all that, but it's seemingly going away. At least that's what I'm thinking. So Bellion's gonna still be one of the highest pre-bans, I think, for majority of players. And even standard players don't necessarily like Bellion. I almost feel like every time I see I see any RTA fight, Bellion is banned from one side or another, or even both. So maybe Bellion is just, you know, like, it's such a broken design that she really needs to be banned, right, for book abusers. So let's talk about the RGB heroes. Says, I spent 20 minutes on the ML5s, okay, so hopefully I'm gonna blast through this. Okay, so it says, let's talk about it really quick. So the S2 passive, Encroach has now been moved to the S1, which is fine, because it honestly didn't serve any purpose, being it its own passive. So now, because tooltips and all that stuff, skill descriptions are long as heck now, they of course don't shy away from adding that just straight to the S1. Plus, it really was just linked to the S1 anyway. So I'm glad that they did that. Dark Shadow after... so I don't think I need to talk about this because it's realistically the exact same thing. So let's move down. The encroach damage has increased as well though. So that's probably something to know. Because that would be an AoE. But that will be something that... Yeah, I think that's fine to talk about. That's it. Die Hard. So Die Hard now is his new passive, not Encroach. So it has the same passive as like T-Surin, Roy, and Emma Celine. Okay, so it's he takes 2 hits to guarantee the kill. I do like the fact that after being attacked, grants a stealth for 1 turn. That gives him even extra protection that even someone like Roy doesn't have. And this could be any attack, right? So this could be any attack. So in terms of like AoE, single target, it doesn't matter. He just goes into stealth. So it's kind of like T-Surin, but it doesn't require T-Surin's like HP threshold thing. And also T-Surin's stealth, I think, comes after the fact or something. Like something about the turn rotation, but it's like right after being attacked, he's granted stealth. But of course, something like a true damage pop near the end, so like a Winter, if she hits Says, Rimuru, those kind of like extra damage pops will still probably kill through, unless he has a barrier or mitigation or something like that. But this is very nice. So it keeps him alive. Now, as I'm talking about this, I did do a Giselle video, and I know that Giselle has been released now, and Giselle has been very underwhelming. And I did say that in my Giselle initial thoughts. I think that her damage seems really good on paper. Her rotation seems very good. Serves as a secondary DPS that serves another DPS. So you have a really strong 2 DPSs, but Giselle didn't have survival. So that's what made her kind of hard to use. And especially even aggro and cleave players now finding that she's really hard to use. But I think Says honestly has a decent chance. Again, being soul abusers, his S3 always hit really hard. That damage has now increased, so I can't even imagine what the heck that means, because Says at this point has the highest damage modifier in the game if you soul burn it. Soul burning is a 3.2 times mod. So I think that is the highest in the game right now. I think like CDOM has something close with the S1 being soul burnable, but Says has the S3 as the highest damage. Now if Says is built at let's say base speed, inflicting just pure damage, and now we have access to pen set, which back in the day when Says was like, you know, highly used, he didn't even have pen set. Like pen set wasn't even a thing. So with this new buff, with some survival, can he be used as this like a common draft right now is like Oxlots with a Guider Aether, or Oxlots with Flan or Amelia or something like that with like a Roy to top off the damage? Can Says be that double pick, that double damage pick? Time will tell, but I think that his potential now definitely skyrocketed. But again, even though he has you know, pretty decent protection in and of himself, I still don't think he would lend too well to like say a standard fight. So like these pure DPS that have these kind of cool skills definitely flex better into some kind of aggressive or cleave style draft. I'm curious if something like Wind Rider will be his best in slot. Not the way it worked before. Wind Rider used to be really broken, where he killed on the S3 and the Wind Rider attack buff actually just gets added to the additional damage, so the splash damage was insane. I know it won't work like that, but I'm just curious of what kind of like buff would you put on him, or what kind of artifact. Maybe is there a thief artifact that increases attack? Thinking off the top of my head, but if not, probably something like a portrait or symbol of unity or something in order to guarantee the kill, so you do the splash damage. That might be the way to go. But overall, I think he's very solid. I think he would be fun, but hopefully he's actually usable. I think he can be though. Yufine is probably one of my favorite RGB heroes in this set, this buff, and Yufine was a PvP hero, then she was like kind of like a PvE only hero, and now she's back to PvP. Lots to talk about it. So Dragon's Roar is the S2, so a lot of the things centralizes on her S2 now, and again, yet again, we have another hero that benefits from a 20 soul burn. So again, Bellion being the ban, Yufine probably usable in some kind of aggressive draft. You can actually tell because the way that she rotates as well, as I go through it. So the common theme is Smilegate didn't want us to abuse Book, but clearly they want us to abuse Book. So they need to get their like game design in terms of the holistic game design like better. And the fact that it's also Mage Frenzy, I feel like they're just buffing these heroes based on the RTA season specifically. Just like, okay, we got this season, we wanted to be mage heavy, let's buff all these heroes to make mage picks more incentivizing or something. I don't know, it's really weird, but it's just like this season was super specific. I feel that it was just like, everyone get your books ready and everyone pick mages. And again, you can see this here. Again, Dragon's Roar is the S2. Increases defense with attack now, so can be used in a standard fight, I think, with the kind of bulk. It used to be speed buff. The Soul Burn extends the buff duration granted to Dragon Roar to the caster by 1 turn, but it also grants an extra turn. That's like insane. So I think it used to be like extra turn on the S3. Now it's the S2 because now you can strip and you can silence. Okay, so AoE strip into potential silence, and she has an EE that adds a 15% chance to silence, so she technically has access to 100% chance to silence. Okay, so pretty powerful, especially if they don't have a lot of ER or a cleanser. And then Dragon Charge is the S3. We'll just talk about the Awakened version. Attacks the enemy with a massive blade. When the enemy is defeated, resets the cooldown for this skill. When the target is silenced, penetrate target's defense by 70%. So there was a change, definitely. Before it was that if they were buffed, damage dealt is increased by 50%. And that used to be really great back when pen set wasn't a thing, or even penetrating skills wasn't a thing. And when Gear's score was around the I-85. So in terms of, you didn't really need defense pen, but defense pen now is obviously very big. And if her damage mods haven't changed, which it doesn't look like it, they dropped the damage mod here, her S3 has always been like very strong. Always been a decent nuke damage. Back in the day when Luna and Yufine were like some of the, like, you know, very solid like single target damage dealers, like you would compare the two, right? And then Luna got a defense pen, so like I guess they're thinking, why not Yufine as well? So yeah, so if they're silenced, it does 70% defense pen, and it's still very powerful. At least that's what I'm thinking right now. But when this skill is available according to the cooldown count, after an ally, except for the caster attacks, that if the target is silenced, increase the combat range by 20%. So again, it's the fact that she has Soul Burn accessible for 2 turns, like an extra turn. This also being able to reset, and also being able to do good damage, and she can have attack buff, defense buff up for an additional turn. It's just like a lot of really good stuff. And then also increasing combat readiness. So if your opponents have, let's say, 4 silence, right? And you and they're on the field, she'll always like after your ally attack, she'll always increase that 20%. So you can imagine her self-sufficiency, aggressive nature, and it brings packs a punch. So I think in a standard fight, she might work even better than someone like a Runka, I feel, at this point. And although serving different purposes, but in some kind of aggressive draft, again, you have like another high damage dealer, right? So you have like, you know, the Hawk and stuff like that. right now, even though if Zahak doesn't kill on one turn, or like one shot something really tanky, he does like, he almost like puts the nail in the coffin. And Yufine could probably do the same thing. So probably don't expect something like a Yufine just nuking out like a Destina in one go or something. But it's just more of like a threat, right? Yufine's S1 also does defense break, and it's a 2-turn defense break. So there's stuff to keep in mind that like she has a lot of tools in her kit, even though the buff itself is only talking about the S2 and S3. Celine. Celine's buffs has always been like, every time she got buffed, something changed about her that her use case is somewhat different. Now, some may argue say that no, it hasn't really changed. So in the last iteration of Celine's buff, her D-spell was changed to the blink itself, which I think is fine, or the intuition rather. But it was on the S3 before, and now the damage share is also changed. Probably it is better. I just feel like she never really gets the, okay, this is the buff, guys. This is the buff. It's like, yes, she will be usable, and she has always been usable. I'm not 100% sure this makes her more usable than she already is. Outside of this, though, this is the big one, right? So the unaffected by elemental disadvantage part means that now you can't even really bait with like a fire hero, right? Unless it's Kayron, I guess, but you can't really bait with a fire hero in terms of like a AI driven comp. In World Arena, of course, now is also less threatening too, because if the fire hero is literally the opponent's win con, then your Celine can, you know, well, I mean, yeah, it does depends, right? It depends on what EE you're using, but let's say you're using the random EE, the stealth EE. It's no longer a really big issue. If you are using the highest attack EE, again, people can't bait with the highest attack like a fire hero, so now she will actually hit. And for the majority of the high damage dealing fire damage dealers, high attack damage dealers rather, Celine will probably one-shot it anyways, unless it has access to immortality, right? So still Kayron and I guess Melissa wouldn't matter, right? Melissa doesn't get the, yeah, so Melissa would actually just die. Yeah, so Thunderclap, let's talk about the Awakened version like right away. So it's the same thing, right? So the damage here now is just onto the S3, which, yeah, so I'm like, okay, there's benefit there, but hopefully you see what I mean. It just feels like she's got the same kit, kind of moved around. The really only buff she has, I think, the soul burn damage increase on the S3, almost guaranteed kill, hopefully, and then the disadvantage. So it's still a good buff, while she maintained most of what she had in the previous buff. So the barrier with the evasion now, and then the dispel on the S2. So I think that it's just less risky to use, I think. Less risky to use. Yeah, people can't just like bait her mechanics and stuff like that. Camilla, also very nice. In their description is like, oh, she's for PvE content, so that if she gets restrict, I guess this is for Ancient Inheritance mainly. If they get restrict, she can't even get the turn. So now she just grants an extra turn. So very nice for her cycling, so she get the attack buff, and then she doesn't do the S3 until her health is low anyway. So attack buff into S1, so defense break, pulling the dual attack from the highest attack hero. Very nice synergy for Camilla, very nice. And then Samsara Prayer Beads. I like this buff compared to what it was before, because like what it was before, it was just actual trash, right? I don't... Okay, never mind. I was gonna say something pretty degen. I'm not gonna say it. But Samsara Prayer Beads was also known as something else beads because it was just that bad, right? 40% chance to grant increased effect resistance and defense for one turn at the end of the turn. So very, very low proc rate, plus it was only one turn. And it's just like, okay, what warrior can really use this and wants that RNG, right? So in terms of the buff from what it was before to what it is now, I think it's okay. I think warriors could definitely use more of this kind of stuff. So when attacking with single attack, damage dealt is 10%, and then when attacked by a single attack, damage decreases damage suffered by up to 16%. So realistically what this is kind of like almost like Draco Plate, but obviously it's not, because it's not crit damage based, it's extra damage, and also it doesn't require a crit to nullify the damage. So why I like this is because like I feel that sometimes maybe you don't have enough proof of valor. Maybe this could be good for Arunca in the future. Who knows? Like stuff like that. Like this gives this artifact a bit of versatility. Now, am I gonna dust it off and use it right away? I don't know. Like maybe like even Shu could use this if you're not using Snow Crystal or like Symbol of Unity or anything else. Maybe this could be used for Shu. So I think like overall the artifact is good. I don't know if it's broken, but it's definitely way better, right? Also, just to keep in mind that it doesn't stack. So, yeah, so if you have some kind of like reduction, damage reduction specifically, that is applied to AoE, even though it's not damage sharing, so that's kind of weird. But I guess they're just trying to, you know, make sure that they don't mess up overlapping effects. But regardless, I mean, this is what is said on like Proof of Valor and all that stuff as well. So this is nice if you don't have enough Proof of Valor and you needed your warriors to have some kind of sustain. Like this could be like I mean, heck, this could be like maybe best in slot for a Rimuru, right? If you run your Rimuru on like a Proof of Valor, maybe this is your best in slot now. I just thought about that actually. But Celestine, also a decent buff, is now a single attack instead of using the basic skill. So single attack is obviously decent because of heroes now that have more than one single attack. So someone actually, I think it was in my YouTube comments, was saying that like someone like Ning Ning, who has access to 2 single attack skills, so the S2 and the S1, could probably benefit from a Celestine for a longer fight. So maybe, in the future when more Soul Weavers, I would say meta Soul Weavers, have more single attack skills, maybe Celestine just, you know, has more bang for buck, right? So obviously the Celestine artifact becomes stronger than Rod when you're considering how many non-attack skills versus how many single target skills a Soul Weaver has. So that's something that will definitely make Celestine kind of like, you know, be seen as maybe a serious artifact to be used. We don't know though, because like Rod does significantly heal much more. It's not 16%, and then we still have what's it called, the DN artifact, Unfading Memories, also to compete with. But again, those were reliant on non-attack skills, but this is reliant on actually skills that hit. So it could have more benefit in the future. Andre's crossbow also a lot better than it was before. Again, I don't think that a lot of people was running this. I remember when Lua was just released, someone was actually running an Andre's crossbow Lua, which was actually kind of annoying because I actually went into the fight actually needing souls, but it kept on stealing souls. So that was actually pretty big brain play. But outside of that Guild War attack, I haven't seen Andre's crossbow almost ever. With this being hit chance up to 20%, being a 4-star artifact, if you already have a max limit broken one, great. It might be good to secure a couple more because now you got hit chance and effectiveness comboed, right? So all these, like, there's all these artifacts now running around with hit chance built in it and then an additional stat or an additional effect. And I think this is a theme that Epic 7 is trying to fill out. So I think Andre's crossbow will have use, especially if you want to amp that effectiveness up while having hit chance. So something like a debuffer, obviously, that is a ranger, that's probably not Briar Witch, but someone that needs the hit chance but also needs increased effectiveness, definitely super high. Because again, this is not like high value, because this is not, again, locked to AoE or locked to single target. It is just, you get that as an extra benefit. So this artifact legit just adds a nice toolkit to your hero if they don't have hit chance and they need to do some debuffs or strips. So that's pretty much it for this. My thoughts on the balance patch. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I'm gonna try to render this out tonight so I can upload it. So hopefully there's like 3 days buffer before this patch actually drops. I'm gonna end this here. If you guys have Discord, check out the Discord server. Subscribe to YouTube if you haven't. And again, thank you guys for watching. I will see you guys next time.